4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
What's going on, everybody? RDAPdan here. Happy, what's today? Today's Wednesday, Ladies' Night Wednesday. Hope you guys are all having an amazing day. And put my makeup on too heavy. That was shiny. So I got to wipe it in a little bit. I can see it on the camera. So as you guys can see, we have the lovely Candy Pickett with us today. Candy was sentenced to 132 months back in 2003. So we're going to talk to her a little bit today. So I'll go ahead and introduce and let you say hi there, Candy.
Hello, everyone. I'm glad to be here.
And it looks like we got a few people in the room. We've got Holly Coleman's here. Hey, Holly, how are you? We got Holly, we got Robert, we got Bless This Mess in the room with us, Kimberly, and Dave so far. So welcome, guys. Thank you for joining the stream. And man, I can really see how it's crazy. In the mirror, it looked like it was on there. I wear makeup, guys. What can I say? You know, got my Mary Kay cosmetics going on. So we're going to talk a little bit with Holly about what her experience was like going through, not just in prison, but also leading up to prison, how she ended up getting 132 months. Did she think she was going to get 132 months? And we're going to talk a little bit about that. I posted some questions for some of the women clients that we have on some of the most common questions that a lot of women have. And the number one question that a lot of women had were, and I don't want you to answer this yet, we're going to talk about this a little bit later in the show, but just to let everybody know, the number one question was, are there sexual relations with women inmates and male guards throughout the women's prison population? So we're going to answer that a little bit later on in the show. But right now, why don't you tell us a little bit about what your crime was and how this all kind of came about?
My crime was conspiracy to I can't even talk, to distribute crack cocaine. That came about, it came about in so many ways, but it really started with me just selling pills here and there. I got to like the power from it. I really liked the feeling alive, being up and just full of speed all the time. And then that's when I was introduced to the cocaine. I would sit and party all night until I couldn't get any more in my nose, so I started smoking it. And then that just put me around all types of people, the kind of people that, well, I got investigated for murder 3 times, and of course I've not done anything like that, but that tells you the type of people that I was hanging around with for me to be thought of like that. You know, the old birds of a feather flock together.
So because of the drug addiction, you started hanging out with people that you probably should not have been hanging out with, to the point where you could have ended up in other indictments. You know, you got investigated for murder, you said 3 separate times. Tell us a little bit about, so you're addicted to drugs, and how many children? Did you have children at this point?
Yes, I had 2 children. I didn't do any kind of drugs for the first, probably, I think there were 2 and 3. All of this happened in a very short time span. I was having some issues with their dad. He worked out of town all the time, and I just chose to do drugs to numb the pain. I was bartending at the time, and at the end of the night, my tip jar would be full of drugs. So I would just stay up all night and do them. And it was just a downward spiral from there. But when I got arrested, my kids were 3 and 4.
So tell us about the arrest. How did that come about?
Well, I was actually working on the whole I'm going to get clean thing. You know, I've done it many times. The whole, oh God, if you'll just let my heart continue beating tonight and don't kill me, I'll never touch this again. And then, of course, I would do that for a few days, and then someone would call and say, hey, you want to go get high? And I would run out. But I had been at my grandmother's, and I was detoxing. I hadn't done anything, didn't want to do anything. Well, I was renting out my house. So the lady called, she had my rent money, and my uncle and aunt took me to go get the rent money. And as soon as I had that money in my hand, I wanted to go get high. So I walk over to the payphone, and but my family had taken my cell away, so I wouldn't have, instant access to people. So I go to the payphone, I've got this money in my hands, and I see some of my customers in the next parking lot over, and they're talking to someone in this old ragged out car. Well, they see me and yell to me, come up, say my name. Well, it just so happens the people in that car were undercover agents trying to set those two up. And when they saw me, well, I found out that they've been looking for me for 3 days, and everyone that I dealt with, and then probably 52 other people had been arrested already in this conspiracy. And I knew nothing of it because, I was sleeping it off at my grandmother's.
And when I looked this up, it looked like the indictment was a 200 plus count indictment with a ton of co-conspirators that were involved in the indictment. So what involvement did they actually say that you had that they were able to tie you into this indictment?
Several of the people on this indictment had already told that they had sold me, so many drugs a day for so many months or weeks, depending on who the person was. And there was also 2 more conspiracies at the same time that went down. And there were people on those other conspiracies. If you'll look at my paperwork, it says something like unknown. Well, that's because they weren't on my exact paperwork. But, and it was that. And then one time I was with this guy, he had went to someone's house and he actually sold it, but I was with him. So that was how I got drug in on the conspiracy in the first place. And then all these other guys told on me.
And what did they say your involvement was? What was their proof against you?
They had no proof, just their word. Those guys saying, hey, I sold her this was all they needed. And my choice was, you can either sign this agreed factual basis and just agree to it. And they've already signed paperwork stating they will testify against you. So you can either sign this, agree to it, and get 10 to life, or you can take it to court and fight it and get 20 to life.
So without the plea agreement, you were looking at 20 to life. Now, I know that you told me when you got sentenced, you thought you were going to receive a sentence of 60 months.
Yes.
Why did you think you were going to receive a sentence of 60 months?
I had an attorney. He wasn't a paid attorney, but he was telling me that because I was a woman, because I didn't hassle them, that I would get 60 months. There were a couple of other girls on the conspiracy with me, and they had already signed pleas for 60 months. They were getting that half. One of them only got 36 months. Another only got, I think, 18 months. So he's telling me, basically because you're a girl, because you didn't give them a hard time, I'm sure we can talk them into this. And I believed it. And I didn't think 5 years would be so bad.
Because it looks like, when I looked at I didn't put it onto this computer, but when I looked at your final judgment, I saw that you were recommended by the judge for the residential drug addiction program. And based on the information you had in your pre-sentence report, did you qualify for the RDAP program?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so you're qualified for RDAP. So you're looking at, 60 months minus my good time, minus a year off for RDAP, 6 months halfway house. I'm not really going to be serving that lengthy of a time compared to what I could be looking at. So what happened at sentencing when the judge handed you down 132 months? What went through your mind at that point?
I think the first thing that happened was I heard my mother crying, screaming. I don't know what she was doing. She about fainted. They had to escort her out. But then I was so stupid at that exact moment. I couldn't even really count. I'm like 12, 24, 36, 48, and it keeps going up. When I'm up past 2 hands, I'm just like, oh my God. I was just numb, really. I didn't know what to think.
And how many people were there with you in the courtroom, family-wise and friends?
Probably 15.
And everybody was expecting a much shorter sentence. Now, you were also the last person to take a plea, correct? That's because you were at your grandmother's house during all of this. and didn't know what was going on. How long were they investigating you guys?
They were investigating us for about 10 months, right down to they knew what I ate on my hamburgers.
It's crazy how much they actually end up knowing. So
Yes.
so you got 132 months, and from the point that you were taken into custody, when you originally got arrested, before you got sentenced, you were never given bond or bail, correct?
Correct. And I think that's because now this was my first felony, but I had misdemeanors. My grandfather is he was a big guy around here. So I would get in trouble. He would get me out of trouble. So I always had this, this false sense of security that my grandfather, well, he's going to get me out of this. I can never be in trouble. So for it to finally hit me that, hey, Granddaddy can't help you this time. You're on your own. It was quite a shock.
So yeah, somebody's brought to my attention that the questions aren't carrying over to the stream. I just realized that. So we'll have to deal with that, guys. I apologize that the questions aren't going to be recorded onto the live stream. I must have clicked off something on accident. We'll fix that next time. So typically your grandfather had gotten you out of trouble. So this time they arrested you, they indicted you, and while you were awaiting sentencing, you were in county jail the entire time. So how long did you sit in county before you actually got sentenced?
I think it was around between 16 and 18 months.
So about a year and a half you sat in county jail waiting for all of this. And were you able to properly prepare for your case from in county jail?
Oh, no. No, I would sit and try to call the lawyer, the attorneys. They didn't accept collect calls. There was no way I could call them. And they would come like the day before court. And just the longest I ever saw an attorney was to do my PSI.
Wow. And when you did your pre-sentence report, did you do personal narratives and character reference letters?
No, I didn't know anything about that.
So you didn't even put something sloppy together. You didn't have any personal narrative or character reference letters.
No, none.
And, that's one of the biggest things that we focus with, not just our clients, but just viewers in general that watch these videos. Obviously Candy was unfortunate where she was remanded immediately. She was in county jail, so she didn't have the good fortune of being able to watch YouTube videos and get guidance and possible assistance. Those of you that are out there watching these videos right now, other people on her indictment got a lot less time than her, especially the women that had smaller roles involved. Once you decide you're going to cooperate, they really look at who comes in first. All of this makes a big difference potentially on the type of time you're looking at. That's why we stress to you guys to reach out and find out how you can be improving on your personal narratives, your character reference letters, preparing for the pre-sentence report. When you did the pre-sentence report, did you meet with U.S. probation? Did they come to see you?
They came, with my attorney, same time.
So it was your attorney and U.S. probation going through that. And did your attorney prepare you at all for the pre-sentence report?
No, he didn't really tell me anything. She just asked the questions. He just basically said, she's going to be asking you questions. You can answer them truthfully. That's what I did. But, and it really hurt me in the end. And my counselor in the prison, he said, you should have been told how to fill this out about your stepfather and how he raised you as your dad. And my stepfather raised me my whole life. And because I didn't reiterate and stress that in my PSI, I couldn't go to his funeral. And he was the one that actually raised me.
So there's all kinds of consequences that people face after the fact for not putting in the preparation up front. And, granted, you didn't really have the access to, unless a friend or a family member was going to search out and find a prison consultant to help with. But most people don't put as much time and effort into your own case as you're going to be able to put into it if you're out on the street yourself. So for those of you that are possibly under indictment right now or under investigation that are watching these videos, do not make the same mistakes that Candy made. Take advantage of the programs, the assistance, the guidance that's out there. If you've got questions, my information is posted on the screen 24/7, so you can definitely give me a call, text. Candy has also told me she's more than willing to answer questions from women that are potentially getting ready to go to prison. Right now, you're currently going through a process to possibly become a life coach of sorts, correct?
Yes, a life coach, a confidence coach, anything I can do to help people. I really want to do something to help women coming out, especially in the area I'm in. There's nothing, there's no help. And going to get jobs and things, I see it every day. And if I wasn't so strong and couldn't take 100 no's to get the one yes, I would have turned back to crime already.
And
Because there are no's.
We talk about that all the time, that once you get out of prison, yes, there are going to be opportunities to find jobs, but there's also going to be hurdles and obstacles, and you got to be willing to do the numbers game. And how many no's is it going to take to get a yes? You've got to be willing to go through that. And every time you walk into a new place, you got to do it with that same enthusiastic, I'm here, I want this job. You can't go in there with your head down. But we're going to get to that in a little bit too. So now you've been sentenced. And then you said you sat in county jail for about 2 more weeks before you got transferred to the actual women's prison camp, correct?
Yes, and I'm telling you what, I could not wait for that day. I never in my life thought I would say, man, I can't wait to get to prison. But sitting in that county.
Yeah, for those people out there that have sat in county, even if you sat in county for a day or two, it's pretty much that same intensity of nothing to do, intensified by 18 months. So which female's prison were you designated to initially?
Alderson.
Okay.
Camp Cupcake, they call it, but I promise you it's not a Camp Cupcake.
So West Virginia, you were sent to women's camp over there, Alderson, and you said you got there, 2 weeks after Martha Stewart left? So you just missed the big celebrity?
Yes, I had just missed her. However, I did get to enjoy all of her nice, beautiful decorations because she left some nice decorations in that place. Beautiful wreaths on all of the units. So they definitely used her wisely while she was in there.
Did she have special treatment, a special cell, additional things that other people couldn't get, or was she treated like a regular inmate in there for the most part?
Both. She did get to stay in one of the cottages. But she did get caught stealing, not stealing, but taking like green peppers and onions from the kitchen. But you're not supposed to do that. It's contraband. But so they watched her very closely. All the guards, they were so glad she left because it was paparazzi all over the place all the time. And they were having to fight them and amp up the security, and they were all having to work overtime. And they said the mail that flowed through there when she was there was absolutely ridiculous. So when I came in, they were all just kind of like,
So Martha Stewart got caught taking peppers and green onions and peppers out of the kitchen to bring back to the unit to, just to jazz up some food.
Yes, on more than one occasion.
Were they like in her pockets? Did she she wasn't just walking out with them in a bag. Was she smuggling them like a regular inmate? Like she had these things like down her pants or up in her shirt?
I think it was pants pockets.
That's pretty crazy. That would be definitely a story that Martha Stewart probably would try not to tell. But yeah. So thanks for sharing that. So you were at Alderson, and so how long did you actually stay at Alderson for? And tell us a little bit about what the day-to-day was like for you at Alderson, jobs, things like this.
When I first got to Alderson, it was, of course it was beautiful. I was fresh air, open. There's no gates. There's no fences. You can walk off at any time. We didn't have the moves on every hour. It was just free reign. You had to be back in at 9 at night, and then you were locked in until 6 a.m., 5 a.m. if you worked certain jobs. But here I was at this beautiful, big, vast land, just green, and I was staying in the cottages. And in the cottages, they had actual bathtubs. So it was just like a little piece of heaven for me at first, really, to be able to take a bath.
So they had bathtubs in prison?
Yes. The cottages were, they don't have them now. But it was just like, it was hardwood floors. You had a room with an actual door. You had a bunk bed in there, a desk, actual rugs, like real rugs that inmates had made and crocheted in there, and you could make it up into a nice little room. And it was like that for a while. You stayed there for orientation, and then you got shipped up on the hill to the actual dorms. And they weren't so cozy.
What were the dorms like? Give us a description of the dorms. Paint the picture.
Have you or anyone else ever seen Orange is the New Black?
Okay.
The open pod, the walls between bunk beds that go up just to the top of the top bunk. So there's little divider walls separating the cubes, but if you're on the top bunk, you can see over the whole cube.
Okay, so that's exactly what we had at Coleman Low. So you were in cubicles with like a 6-foot wall in between the bunks.
Yes.
And it was what, 2-man and 3-mans?
They were all 2 there.
Okay.
2 bunks and 2 lockers in a cube.
And a desk?
And 1 desk.
Okay. So what type of job did you have at Alderson?
My first job was in the cafeteria, and that's what they said everyone had to do coming through. But they immediately took me back and gave me the secretary job, so I actually got to forgo all the dumping trays, sweeping, mopping, things like that. And I promise you, a lot of people were all like, "Oh, what'd you do to get that job?" You know, women are just so catty. But I didn't do anything. I just applied for it. So my first job was that. I was a secretary over CDR. Is that the acronym? Did you all use the same acronym, CDR? Central Dining Room?
No, we didn't. We didn't. I mean, if they had them, nobody ever told me what they were. So you were a secretary, and what did this job pay?
That one, I started at 40 cents an hour.
Okay.
So, I mean, but, everyone else in there was getting started at 12 cents an hour, and that's if they had enough grade 4s. If they didn't, you got $5.25 a month at maintenance pay. And, I mean, you were working hard. You didn't sit down.
Wow.
$5.25 a month can't buy a woman a box of tampons.
So if you're surviving off of your inmate's paycheck, what's the most any job pays at Alderson?
If you worked for Unicor, you can make $1 an hour, $1.10 an hour, and that's it.
I know Unicor depends on the prison you're at. There's Unicors do, like where I was at, they were making it was like wood furniture. What was the Unicor at Alderson?
When they first brought it in, I was still in the kitchen at that point, but they opened it up and it was a call center. We were operators. City and state, please. So
Okay.
they hired, I think, 150 women from the compound, and they made a big deal of it. You had to go test, and you had to speak correctly, and it was really, it brought a lot of conflict to the compound, really, because everyone couldn't just work there, and then it was a money thing. If you didn't have something to pick on or bully someone about already, then now you could call people broke and, I'm better than you, I work at Unicor,
So it was a very desirable job to work in the call center?
Absolutely, because you just got to sit on your butt in this big, nice, air-conditioned building and talk.
So you're on I'm imagining like a call center with cubicles, computer,
Yes.
You've got a dialer, pops up on your screen, you got your headset on, you hear boop, someone's on your ear, you explain to them whatever it is, and you hit the disposition and on to the next call? Yes,
that's exactly how it was. And some people actually knew.
I wish they had a call center Unicor at Coleman. That's the type of business I was in prior to going into prison was running call centers. So it would have been right up our alley, but unfortunately not. So
yeah.
So you went through that, and how long? So how long were you actually at Alderson for?
5 years. Well, no, I guess 4 years. A little under 4 years.
And
yeah.
Now, on your 132 months, how much time did you actually spend in prison?
9 years.
So 9 years.
Almost to the day, yes.
So roughly 132 months is about 11 years. So you served 9 years, and you said you served about 4 and change at Alderson. So what happened that made you not be able to finish your time out at Alderson?
Well, I had this one guard that was really harassing me. And I did smoke cigarettes there whenever I could get a chance to smoke. So this guard just said that I was bringing cigarettes in. And so he said I was bringing them in through visit. So he started like patting me down during visits and interrupting my family time when he never could find anything on me in that because I wasn't doing it. Then he started saying that I was getting people to drop it off, like just outside the compound, and having the ladies from landscape bring it in to me. And my locker was getting torn apart like every other day. The guards would tell me it was going to get torn apart, but I still, it's not a good feeling. It's like you're getting raped, like somebody's going through your stuff. And so I'd had enough of that, and I went up to him one day on Mainline. And for those of you that don't know what Mainline is, during lunchtime, all of the officers and most of the unit team and things, they all stand in the cafeteria in like this big line and try to look really important and intimidating. And you can go up to them and ask them any types of questions. The doctors are usually there or whatever. So I'd had enough, and I went up to this guy and I said, first, you said I was bringing it in through visit. Then you said that I was having it dropped off and smuggled on the compound. What are you going to say next? That I'm training the squirrels to smuggle dope in here? And he didn't like that because I embarrassed him. And about a week later, they called me in the office, and they had written me a shot for saying this, that, and it on the phone. They said that I was talking in code about having drugs brought into the prison.
And it was actually the words this, that, and it?
This, that, and it. That's code talk.
That was code talk for drugs. So because of that,
yeah,
they gave you a shot?
They gave me a shot, and what should have been a very low-grade shot, they took my fire department, they were taking my job, and I was going to go 6 months without any phones or visits.
So you probably just threw everybody for a loop. They took your fire department. You want to tell everybody what your fire department was?
Okay, the town of Alderson is very small. Most of the people that live there either work at the prison or they're family of someone that works at the prison, but they didn't have a fire department. So their fire department was actually prisoners. It was us inmates, and fire tones would go off in the town if there was a fire, and then we would have tones go off in our dorms. We would get up, get dressed, run to the firehouse, and we would go out and save their homes. No guards went with us. We went out on our own. And then, of course, when we came back, we were strip searched, but who cares, because we got to get out and fight fires,
So you're going out and fighting fires. You're in full fireman gear. You're getting on a fire truck. You guys are controlling so you had to go through training, I imagine, to fight fires. They don't just like, hey, there's a hose on that truck. You need to point it at that burning house. So they gave you some training and everything else along with this?
Oh, yes. We went through firefighting 1 and 2 through Bluefield State Community College. And then we had to pass this test and actually drag bodies around through this building with you're blind, you've got all of your gear on, which weighs 40 to 60 pounds, depending on what you're packing. And you have to crawl through this burning building. They've got it blazing hot in there anyway. Your mask is blacked out. You can't see. You have to find the body and drag it all the way out while following protocol.
I guarantee you there's some people watching this video right now that are like, I have no idea what is going on right now. So this is actually typical, guys. This is, when you're getting into camps, specifically women camps, and this happens in men's camps too, they really do take advantage of the free labor on I don't want to use the word abuse, because as she clearly stated, it was like a luxury to be able to go do these things. But at the same time, it is a form of slavery, because now, did you get paid for any of this? This was not a paid job, right? This was a volunteer?
Volunteer. The only quirk we had, every year they had a rodeo. And this rodeo was like 10 different their groups in the community. We would all go out for a 4th of July parade, and we would get to ride the floats and things and compete against all these men in the other counties to see who could get dressed the fastest, who could put a fire out the fastest, and all this. So that, and we had some really cool coats that were actually warm with down feathers in them that went really well in the winter in Alderson.
So you're at a fair, basically at a rodeo with
Yes.
people in the stands, regular people, kids, whatever, alcohol, people are drinking. Did they know you guys were inmates that were doing this, or did they just think you're a bunch of firefighters?
No, they knew we were inmates and they loved us.
I imagine
We
that
took
must have been a draw. I know I would never in my life go to a rodeo, but if they're like, hey, there's going to be a group of inmates at this rodeo, I would be like kind of interested in wanting to go watch this. So yeah, those of you that are watching right now, I'm watching Juan Carlos. He's commenting in the room. He's completely baffled. So your life must have been in danger if you're out there putting out fires.
Yes,
Was anybody
absolutely. No, just like broken ankles or something. I can remember my first fire. I went in and I was so scared that the roof was going to fall in on me. So I'm going through there and I'm trying to be careful with that, but I actually fell through the floor.
You fell through the floor.
Yeah,
So
I didn't go far.
Dangerous is an understatement. Life threatening.
Yes. Yeah, but I don't know. It's just worth it. It makes you feel when you're in there and you're stripped of everything, for you to be able to go out and be able to do something good when you've got all these guards making you feel like you're nothing, you're just an inmate, you're just a number, but it's you out there risking your life to save their homes. It makes you feel good.
Yeah, I can I mean, I can't imagine because I didn't have that type of atmosphere. I was in a low security men's prison, and the closest thing I ever came to getting any type of outside real life type of treating me like a human being was my birthday happened to land on Thanksgiving in 2014. And I told the CO that it was my birthday, and she was making fun of me, thought I was lying. And when she saw it was my birthday, she must have felt bad. But like 3 hours later, she showed up at my cube with it was either Wendy's or Checkers. It was a chicken sandwich. And she looked at me. She's like, if anybody finds out I gave this to you, I will bring a gun into the compound and shoot you in the face. And it was the best tasting chicken sandwich I'd had. But it wasn't the chicken sandwich. It was the fact that somebody that is normally treating everybody less than was now kind of giving me a privileged moment. So I imagine being able to go out into the public, and whether you're fighting fires or cutting grass or, bagging groceries, cleaning up empty lots, just being able to be out amongst regular people without being shackled and handcuffed must have been as close to freedom as you can possibly get without that mundane prison mentality. So I can imagine what it was like, but it just sounds it sounds so far-fetched. Like if I didn't know these stories to be true, I'd be like, this has got to be a bullshit story. But yeah, they've got firefighters that are in the prison system, guys, that are out there fighting fires. And I'm sure there's no shortage of volunteers that want to sign up for this. So free service, people willing to put their lives on the line because they just want to get out of the prison atmosphere for however long it is.
Yes, and you definitely want to get out of there. But even the trainings and stuff, doing the college work, just anything to get away from the officers. Because when you're in a group like that, whoever the leader is, they're not treating you like an inmate anymore. You're more like a person to them. And there's more groups, just like the girls in there that play softball. Whoever's coaching them, they're getting perks, they're getting snow cones, they're getting popcorn, whatever it may be. Any little thing inside there really counts. It just does.
So once you got in trouble for the supposedly smuggling in cigarettes, or they were trying to say you were smuggling in drugs, they were never actually able to find anything. They shook down your lockers, they searched you, they harassed you, never found anything. Eventually, you went and confronted the guard about it during chow hall, during mainline, I mean. And again, mainline is where during lunch, all of the higher ups, the lieutenants, even the captains there, sometimes the warden's there. You've got case managers, unit managers. They're all kind of standing around puffing out their chests, but it's open time to where anybody in the chow hall can walk up to them and ask them some basic questions. So that's their job, is to stand there and answer questions. You went up to them and confronted them about all this harassment, and they gave you a shot for that. And then when they moved you from Alderson, where did they take you to? A SHU? Where did they take you?
They took me, I went to the SHU just for a few hours while they arranged transportation, and they took me to some holding facility in Roanoke, a jail, a regional jail in
Like
Roanoke.
a county jail?
Yes.
Okay. And if you guys remember last Wednesday's video with Holly Coleman, she had a similar situation to where she went to the SHU, but at her prison. And Holly, if you're in the room, I forgot where you said you did your time. I thought you said it was Alderson for some reason.
Was it Hazleton?
I don't think it was
Hazleton.
I don't think it was Hazleton, but she'll probably comment here in a second. There was no SHU at her prison, so she was brought right to a county jail, and she was put into solitary confinement for 2 months into a cell by herself. Your situation was a little bit different. Your punishment was to be sent to county, but you were in a general population with 10 or 15 other women in like a open dorm, but in county.
Yes, and I didn't know what to think going in, because I had left that county jail and been there for so long. I was so happy to get to prison. And then I'm thinking, I'm going right back into this little locked cell, and it's going to be horrible. But they had us in cells, but the day room was open, all the time. You could go in and out. You were just locked down at count time and night. And we just sat and watched TV all day. I didn't have to get up and work. But on the same note, everyone's fighting over the TV and what we watch. And the one girl that wants to control everything wants to watch the Food Channel 24 hours a day. And I'm like, you're not eating that stuff, and you're not going to. Why are you torturing yourself? Why are you torturing me?
And how long were you there for?
I'd say 6 to 8 weeks.
6 to 8 weeks. And then did they transfer you back to the camp?
No, I refused to go back to the camp. I told them I wasn't going back on their compound. I wasn't going back to work. I just kind of sat down on the floor and, said no. You're not taking all this stuff from me. I'm not going back. So I got to go to Tallahassee to a medium at that point.
So you went from the camp to a medium. So you went to a much higher security prison.
Yes, and when I pulled up and saw the place, I thought, uh-oh. You've made such a big mistake. Barbed wire everywhere.
Razor wire, fences.
Yes.
Okay.
Nothing like the beautiful trees, mountains, no fences at all. I mean, it just looked ugly and horrible and cold. Of course, it's hot outside. It's Florida, but you know what I mean.
So what was the big difference between the camp and the medium? Tell us a little bit, like how many inmates were there, how much time, because at a camp, I think for women, you have to have under 20 years to be at camp. Is that correct?
Yes, and it was strange for them to send me even at 11. They like to keep it below 10, at Alderson anyway. But where I had never really been in trouble before, and it was my first felony, they accepted me there. But in Tallahassee, I think the population's pretty close to the same, but I'm in there with people that they're writing the books about. I was in there with the lady that, I can't remember what the book's called, but she worked at the nursing home, and she was her and her girlfriend were killing the people. I don't know if you've read it, but
she was at the medium?
Oh yeah, she teaches the Unicorn class. Big, super sweet woman, really.
So was there more violence at the medium?
A little. People went to the SHU more often. I'd say there were more fights. At the camp, it was mostly fighting over girlfriends. There, they were really fighting over microwaves, or you stole my pen, you got this. And a lot of it was just someone not liking the color of someone's skin. But I think that was more or less about attitude, and not so much a racist type thing. Just that individual person. But if one jumps, they all jump.
Did they look at paperwork in there? Like, did they want to see your pre-sentence report? Did they want to see if you had a 5K1? Not you necessarily specifically, but like in men's mediums, it sounds completely the opposite of how a men's medium is ran. And we'll talk about that in a second, because I know you have some information on that. But is that stuff that they wanted to do at a women's medium?
Now at the women's, and I don't know about everywhere, but the ones I was at, you were not given that information, and it was not allowed to come into the prison either. So no one had it.
So women didn't find creative ways to get pages of their pre-sentence report sent in to show that, they weren't there for, because at a medium, there could have been women, there could have been sex offender women there at the medium, right?
Oh, there were. And after I came home, I have found out that tons of women that I spoke to were there for selling their children online to men.
Wow.
And I had no clue. None.
So if they were at a medium, that wouldn't have, when you would have known, because even though like at a medium or a low or a camp in the men's situation, you're not allowed to have your paperwork either. However, you have to find creative ways to get pages, like maybe sent in a bunch of legal documents. In the middle of it, there'll be 2 or 3 pages from your pre-sentence report telling a little bit of information about what your crime was, if you 5K1'd, if you had a Rule 35, sex offender. Because in a medium, in a men's medium, that's the only way you're going to be able to associate on the compound and go through living your day-to-day life. If you have that information and it's bad information, they're going to tell you need to go check into the SHU. So it sounds like the women's prison was not run as violent in a way as it was at a men's prison. So that sounds like doesn't sound like it's a whole lot different than the camp. How many women were there?
I would say about between 1,600 and 2,000.
At the medium. And how many women are at the camp?
Probably the same.
Okay, wow, that many women at Alderson. Okay, so what was your job when you got to the medium?
When I got to the medium, well, my prison mom, because with me having so much time, I had a whole new family in there. And I even had brothers and uncles.
So explain that a little bit. A prison mom, is that a made-up term, or is this like an actual prison issue?
Most women in prison come up with a family in there, and an older woman that they're close to, they're going to call her mom. Someone their same age or a little younger might be your sister or your baby sister. If you have a friend in there that's a lesbian that's more manly, she might be your brother or uncle.
I thought you were going to say husband.
So. Well, that too.
This sounds like going back to your childhood, like you're playing house.
Yeah, that's exactly how it is.
Is that what it was like? Okay, they definitely don't do that at the men's prison. At least no one that I know went to prison got to play house. But so it sounds like night and day experiences for women and men. Like there's 2 different experiences that men and women go through. Men in a higher security prison are definitely have to watch their back a little bit more, pay attention to what's going on. Not that you don't in a women's prison, but it sounds like it's a little bit more relaxed, to where as long as you're not doing anything ridiculously crazy, you're pretty easy to stay out of trouble. So what was the job that you ended up with?
I was over the education center. I was the secretary for the administrator, and I was over the adult continuing education classes. So I coordinated all of those. I kept up with people's outdates on who could get in and keeping those classes full. I actually taught Excel and Word classes. And that was my main job the whole time I was there. Well, toward the end, I was asked to go take a job at cosmetology so I could keep an eye on things up there for the administrator. But I've always had it made, really, when it comes to jobs.
What was the pay at that job? The one you had pretty much the duration of Tallahassee medium?
40 cents an hour.
40 cents an hour. Okay, so then none of this really afforded you any commissary, and I'm assuming.
Oh no.
Now, did you have money coming in from the outside to help you with commissary and food and things like this?
I did. Sometimes it was weekly, sometimes it was monthly. In the beginning, it was way too much. I didn't think it was too much. I would call and practically demand. I had to have the max amount that I could spend every month at commissary.
Was it 320?
350?
350, okay.
Maybe. You might be right on the 320, 340. But I wanted that. I wanted the max time on my phone. I wanted all of this. And maybe 3 years in, something around there, I was at Alderson, but I asked for a receipt or a printout to see what all I'd had come in versus what I'd spent at commissary. And it was 10 grand or over, and I about died. And at that point, I just cut back.
So within your first 3 years, you spent more than $10,000 on inmate expenses, commissary, phone, computer, all the new clothes, all the new shoes coming out, and that's, guys do the same thing in prison. So those of you that are watching, you're wondering, how much money can somebody spend in prison? It depends on your lifestyle. If you're trying to, have all the newest stuff that comes out in the prison, the new MP3 player, they come out with new shoes every quarter, and somebody always wants the new shoes for pictures or visitation. And stuff's not cheap, 70, 80 bucks for shoes, boots, sweaters, so when you're constantly upgrading your clothes, and if you're spending a lot on snacks and high-end foods, it's very easy to go through $300+ every month for sure. So now, did you qualify for the residential drug addiction program?
I did qualify, and I actually did finally get into it. I was hoping...
At which prison?
At Tallahassee.
Okay. So
because of my
you got into RDAP.
Yes.
So tell us about your RDAP experience.
I loved RDAP. I loved everything about it. In Tallahassee, when you move into RDAP, it has its, you go into this different building completely, and you're actually in a room with a door that closes. It's not a cell. It's just, you have your own toilet in there, the bunk beds and the desk and a door. You can't hear anything when you close it. It's, it's just kind of like your own little efficiency place. And I loved the teachers, but it's the people. RDAP people were always wanting to tell on people. I don't understand it, why, but again, I was over a few things over there. And one of them was the TV scheduling, and that's not something, listeners, please, if you're given the opportunity to be over the TV schedule and you in prison, do not take the job, because it's only going to be a headache for you and conflict.
I think that's great advice, and not to get too much off into that, but we talk about that in a lot of videos, that 90% of your basic confrontation will usually happen over the TV in the TV room. And I didn't even know there was such a job or something to where there's somebody in charge of scheduling the TV. But so that was your job. So you had that was your inmate job while you were in the RDAP unit. So go ahead and tell us a little bit more about what happened in RDAP.
Well, I was 8 months in and very involved. I ran this secret thing in the monthly paper. People would write in to tell, things that someone was doing. They wouldn't give names, just scenarios, and ask for my advice. So I did that. I did the TV thing. Well, someone wanted to watch something, but they hadn't put it, they hadn't requested it in time. And I did everything like I was supposed to. I wasn't about to let it slide because she was bigger or, because I was afraid. You can't show that type of weakness in there or even pretend. But she got mad, and I can't remember what she said, but she made something up that had them questioning a group of people. Oh, I know what it was. Said that we were selling... like decorating boxes or decorating cubes or making decorations and selling them, because we had control of the art supplies and cabinets because I decorated the bulletin boards. And
that would be against inmate or BOP policy, right? Especially in RDAP, you're not allowed to run any type of inmate hustle. So is that what that would have been considered, like an inmate hustle? You're making little artsy things and then selling them to other inmates because they like your work. And potentially that could create conflict. Somebody pays you for something, they didn't get it. All kinds of issues could arise. So that's the reason why you're not allowed to do that. So somebody created an illusion that you were doing this and brought this to RDAP staff.
Yes, so they called me in for an RDAP team, and they weren't going to do anything except they wanted to keep me in there 3 months longer. And I wasn't getting time off for the program. Well, I tried and tried. I was getting that 1 year off for the what was it? The minimum mandatory, or the crack law. 1 year off for crack law.
So in 2000, just so you guys know, I think it was 2012 or 2011. Obama passed a law. I don't know what the actual formal name is. They call it the crack law, where it was a 1 point reduction on the sentencing on the guideline table. So because of that, and it was retroactive, it didn't just happen for people coming in after. For people that were already in prison under a crack or cocaine case could qualify for this 1 point reduction on their guidelines, so it would reduce their sentence or their minimum mandatory to whatever those guidelines were. So she qualified for that, but how come you weren't qualifying for any time off for RDAP? We never got to this.
Well, because of my out date, and they let you in by your out date. My out date was still showing, further away. As soon as that law passed, I wrote my judge and asked him to go ahead and change my out date so I could get in sooner. He never did. So by the time I got accepted into the program, it was too late for me to get time off.
So you were in the program without enough time to do the halfway house and everything else. So what year did you get into RDAP?
Oh, it had to have been 2011.
And you got released in what year? 2012.
12.
Okay, yeah. So that explains why you weren't getting time off. And these are considering factors, guys. A lot of these people that are going to be getting ready to go into prison, there's a lot of movement that goes around. So just because you're sentenced to a certain amount of time does not guarantee that you're going to be able to qualify for RDAP. It's when you get into the program, because it's based on your release date. If there's other people with sooner release dates than you, they're going to take priority over you. And with your situation, once your date did change, you missed that cutoff to receive any time off for the program. So you were in RDAP for how long?
8 months.
So you did 8 months of a 10-month program. And other than maybe learning some coping skills, you got none of the benefit from getting any of the time off.
No, I just really enjoyed it. I like the tools. I can't remember many of them now, except the camera check. I do those multiple times a day. So there's some 7 attitudes or something. I can't remember, but I just like the program.
So so you did 8 months, and then you dropped out after 8 months. Is that what happened?
Yeah, because I didn't want to do the rest of my time there in that unit, having to be scrutinized, and we had to be in at certain times of the day. They would watch us all over the compound. God forbid they saw you talking to a lesbian. They thought you had a girlfriend and you'd be pulled in for a team. So I just said, no, I'm going to move back to my dorm and do the rest of my time in peace.
And Holly just commented. Holly, she was in Victorville. Couldn't remember
Victorville.
that.
Okay.
She did the SHU in Bernardino County jails where she did her time in the SHU. Thank you, Holly, for updating us on that. So you dropped out of RDAP. You had about a year or so left, maybe a little bit less. Tell us a little bit. We kind of want to talk. I know I've gotten some questions here. And so tell us a little bit about relationships inside the prison system. This has been the biggest question. So those of you that have been waiting for this question, we're talking about relationships between female inmates. And I meant to talk to you about this, Holly, and it completely past my mind. We got so many other conversations. So I'm sure Holly has some similar stories. But with you, Candy, tell us about what type of relationships going on with guards, the male guards, and female inmates. Tell us a little bit about that, and were you ever approached?
It went on all the time. Yes, I was approached.
And tell us at which location so we know we can reference a time frame.
Both, actually, but mostly at Tallahassee. Actually, at Alderson, it was female guards, not male guards. One male guard, but mostly female guards. And they're not there anymore either. But at Tallahassee, there were 2 that it was very much, they were bringing me gifts, bringing me Victoria's Secret's body sprays, perfumes, cigarettes, just,
2 guards.
Mm-hmm.
Male or female guards?
Male in Tallahassee.
Okay. And what were they hoping or expecting in return?
Oh, they so hoped I would slip off into the back offices with them at nighttime.
And did that, I know you said that never happened with you. You never did that, but did that happen with other inmates?
Oh, yes, I've seen it happen. And a lot of the things that happen like that, more so than just your actual guards, will be with the man in charge of electric or HVAC or something of that nature, because they have more alone time with their main apprentice, if you will. I know at Alderson, I'll tell you this, the garage, the man that was over the garage, I can't remember his name, but he was known for it. But he was a nice looking man, and these women would flock. Oh, they wanted to work down there so badly because they wanted to.
Because they've been locked up for so long, I imagine.
Oh, yes. I mean, these women are crazy. And if they couldn't get a guard because he was already with someone else or for whatever reason, then all of a sudden they're gay, you know.
Oh, if you're saying if the male guard wouldn't, then it's because he was gay. That's why he didn't want them. So let's talk about consequences here. So obviously this is not looked upon kindly within the BOP and the prison system. What happens if a male guard, now whether it's a guard or just a male employee of the prison, what happens if they're caught and proven that they were actually, and we're not talking about just sneaking away and making out, we're talking about actual intercourse, having sex, relationships. I imagine there was times where women did they ever turn up pregnant, or did you ever know of any women that got pregnant where guys didn't wear protection? Did that ever happen while you were there?
I believe that someone got pregnant right after I left, not when I was there. And the man is actually in jail now. He was arrested and charged with rape.
So if you're a male guard or CO, I imagine male or female, you are charged with rape if you're having consensual sex with an inmate. And I'm assuming it's because an inmate is not able to give consent because they are not allowed to do that, correct?
Correct. And it's because they're trapped. They can't get away. It's like you're in a cage. You can't go anywhere. So you feel like you have to do it. It's very easy to say that
you had to do it, or you felt you had to do it. Your life was in danger. There's a million things that could be said. So the man is charged with rape. And does he have to register now?
Yes, he would have to register just like anyone else charged with rape.
So these guys that are getting in trouble having sex with women in prison are getting charged with rape, potentially going to prison, and registering now as a sex offender within the National Registry.
Yes.
And they know this consequence prior to making these decisions.
Yeah, they have to know that. I'm sure they give courses on that. They must tell them, hey, these aren't women, they're numbers. Don't look at them like that. But if you would see how some of these women dress in there, and they're cutting their pants to make them skin tight, and it's just ridiculous. It really is.
So yeah, that's mind-blowing to me. I mean, my girlfriend told me that it went on a little bit too at Coleman. She said not so much, at least not when she was there, because it was definitely, they were cracking down on it big time. But she said the same thing that you said. A lot of guards would bring in perfumes and things like this, and it wasn't like money and commissary. It was little gifts here and there, just feeling, I guess, liked. So there you go, guys. If you're wondering if male guards are having sexual relationships with women in prison, absolutely. So when women COs got in trouble for doing this, did they also receive the same type of charges?
Yes, I've not heard of one getting caught. I don't think they ever get told on. Maybe they're, more smooth than the men are about it. But when I was in Tallahassee for the first 2 years, we didn't have a dentist because his assistant, which was an inmate, actually held his sperm in her mouth, spit it in something, went and told on him, thinking she would get a sentence reduction for getting raped. Yes, and she didn't. And he's in jail.
Jeez. Mm-hmm. Hardcore. So we're gonna answer a little bit of questions here. Holly's posted. Let's see, Holly, 10 years less for a camp. So yeah, I've heard conflicting stories on. Now I know for men in camps, you can't be sentenced to more than you can't have 10 years. You have to have under 10 years remaining on your sentence in order to be in a men's camp. Now I've heard for women, depending where you're at, some camps you can have up to 20 years in a camp. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that's true or not. Holly's saying that as far as she knows, it's 10 years. So, have you heard any information on that?
Well, there was a few older women in there, and I'm talking when I was there, they were in their 40s, early 50s, and they had been there for well over 10 years, and they were going to be there for, I think they had 25 to 30 year sentences. So I think it depends on maybe if you're not violent, maybe your health even, and I don't know. There were definitely people. I mean, myself, I had 11. They took me in, and then those older women were there with lots of time, but none of them were violent. So that may be the answer, and it may have just been close to their families.
And with you though, with the 11 years, after your good time though, you were under the 10 years, right?
Yes.
Okay. So I will get clarification on that to find out for those women out there that are wondering that question. Holly was also talking about, Holly, what were you referring to when you said explain that? You were saying couldn't have PSR. Explain that. So your PSR, your pre-sentence report, is basically has all of your information, has your charges, has what you did, if you cooperated, if you had a 5K1. It goes through a little bit of everything. So your PSR is kind of like your blueprint of your entire existence from the time that they started investigating you to pretty much where you are up until you go into prison. So having your pre-sentence report in prison can cause problems or conflict if other inmates were to see, other people on your indictment, who you told on, who told on you. So I think the reason they do not allow pre-sentence reports into prison is for safety issues, is what I would imagine. And I think that's what Holly is referring to. And that's one of the big reasons that when people are getting ready to go into prison, when they're under investigation, under indictment, and they're going to be doing a 5K1 or a Rule 35 or additional cooperation, you really kind of want to do your homework and research and find out what your custody level is going to fall under, because especially if you're a male and your custody points are going to put you potentially into a medium or a pen, even though you're not allowed to have your pre-sentence report, inmates are going to force you to get pages of it sent in to verify what you did, if you testified, what your crime was, and it will be in there. So you need to think about that as a safety factor before making that final decision on whether or not you're going to take a 5K1 or not. Now, when did you got released in 2012? Did you release to the halfway house?
I did. I was furlough eligible too, so my family got to come pick me up and drive me from Florida to Knoxville. That was a very nice trip. Not as long as I would have liked, but yes, I was there for probably 2 months, maybe. I think I could have stayed 2 months, but I didn't. I refused to get a job. I told them that, I had been away from society and all this new technology for too long, and I wasn't going to work down there. So they eventually just let me come on home.
On home confinement or?
No, just home.
That's crazy. So were you still, when did you actually start your probation?
As soon as I met with my probation officer while I was at the halfway house still.
Okay. So you already knew who your probation officer was. And we just had a comment in here. So a lady, bless this mess, her husband had to show his pre-sentence report. So bless this mess, was your husband at a medium or a pen? What security level was he at? And I'll wait for you to respond to that, and then we'll come back to that a little bit. So now you're out. What was the halfway house like?
I did not like the halfway house at all. For one, mine was co-ed. There were men and women there on my same floor. There were men, and after I'd been away for that long, I didn't like it. I didn't feel right. I was scared about everything. I felt like I had this big neon sign that says, I've been in prison. I would have to go out to find a job, walk the streets, take the bus. I didn't know how to do any of that stuff, and I was just scared. My mom's like, you've been sleeping with murderers and rapists and you're scared in Knoxville? Come on.
A little bit different though, right? Because you've got all different kinds of security levels that are mixed into a co-ed federal halfway house.
Yes.
And what you guys shared, the common TV rooms and kitchen, things like this. Now, were you married when you went into prison?
No. No, I had my children's father, but I wasn't with him, so
Okay.
I basically went in single.
And you're married now.
Yes, I actually met my husband at the halfway house.
So you met your husband at this halfway house where you were terrified. How long were you at the halfway house before you met your husband?
Probably a week.
A week. Okay. Was he did he work at the halfway house? Was he an inmate of the halfway house?
He was an inmate, and we were not on the same floors, but when we would go down for meals, we would see each other.
Now, are inmates at the halfway house allowed to date or have any type of relationships?
No, but we got permission.
Okay, while you were still living in the halfway house, you got permission to actually date?
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
never would happen at the halfway house I was at. They'd be like, no.
Don't forget
Go
the
ahead.
48 laws of power.
Yes,
That's all
that's
I'm
right.
going to say.
You learned how to manipulate.
Yes.
I'm just kidding. So
I did.
you met your husband. And how long was he in prison for?
He was in prison for 3 years, and
where
you
at?
won't believe what for. Oh, oh my goodness. Virginia. All I know is Virginia. There's so many there. Name me some.
I mean, was he at a low security, a medium, a
No,
camp?
I think it was medium, but
Okay.
he went in as a police officer. So,
So tell us a little bit about that. What happened? What happened with him? How did he end up going to prison?
um, he was in the war. He's a Marine. He was in the war. Those guys bring home war trophies. I mean, they are trained that they are married to their rifle or AK, whatever their weapon is. And he brought that and a grenade home with him. No big deal. It's his trophies. He comes home. He registers to be a cop. He's been a cop for 2 years. He kind of loves it, but his mom and stepdad divorced, and the stepdad wrote an affidavit that he has this weapon and grenade. So the marshals come, check him, they find the weapons, and they arrested him and sentenced him for that.
What was what was the actual crime? Was he allowed to bring his weapon and a grenade home from? So that was something he snuck home as a little personal trophy that he had put away somewhere, not to go.
Smuggling.
So he had a live grenade basically, and so I guess if anybody has live grenades in their house, you're not allowed to have these apparently. So he
Put them
smuggled
away.
a grenade and would you say an
AK-47.
AK-47. So he smuggled these
Mm-hmm.
weapons from the war. Somebody told on him. They came, found him, charged him, and sentenced him to how much time in prison?
3 years.
3 years. So he got a 36-month sentence. And he's been out how long now? Same amount of time as you, roughly?
Yeah, he was there a month before me.
Okay. So that's a pretty, it just goes to show you that, anybody can fall into the grips of the federal government. Not just bad people go to prison, people that make mistakes. Some people need prison more than others. You and I had a conversation earlier, and you feel like that you needed maybe not a 11-year prison sentence, but you feel like you did need a few years to turn your life around, kick the habit, understand the victims that you created with, the drugs that are out on the street. So you clearly identified that prison wasn't the worst thing in the world for you. It was just a little bit longer of a period of time that you probably needed to make these corrections. But somebody
Yeah,
like your
I
husband,
didn't.
different story.
Oh yeah, I don't, and I know that maybe he shouldn't have done it, but I still think it's ridiculous.
And unfortunately, it's something he has to live with for the rest of his life. Now he's a convicted felon, can't own a firearm, no longer can vote. How much probation did he receive?
He had 18 months probation. We're both working on our presidential pardons. I work for an attorney part-time. She says if we fill them out as thick as they are, we'll get them. She said they make them that way so people won't even bother. So we're working on those.
Okay. And you were given 5 years of probation. How much of your probation did you actually serve?
2.5.
And then did they just cut you loose, or did you have to request it? Did you have to put a motion in for it?
Not a motion. I actually just wrote a letter to the judge. I explained everything I've done since I've been home. From moving from an efficiency apartment to a 1-bedroom to a 2-bedroom, then a house, getting full custody of my kids, running the funeral home, getting married. Just told him everything I'd done. And within a week, I had a letter that said, "You're done.
Man,
You're off."
it only took a week, huh?
Yeah, I was so surprised.
Yeah, I mailed out my letter. It's been about 3 weeks now, and every day I go to the mailbox. You guys are going to know when my letter comes because I'm not going to open it until I'm live on YouTube. I'm going to open the letter and
Oh
read it
my
live.
God.
So it's either going to be a yes or a no. I've only been on probation for a year, and I've got 3 years, so I think it might be a little premature, but I'm going to go ahead and shoot for it. So 18 months. How much probation did your husband serve on probation?
He did his.
The
He
full-
didn't want to.
He
Yeah.
was just like, whatever. I'm just going to do the year and a half. So now you guys
because
have got it
no,
behind you. You've moved on with life. You said what does he do now for a living?
he just got his bachelor's in business management, and he's subcontracting for AT&T.
Okay. So both of you have put this behind you. You've moved forward. What is some advice that you would give to a woman or to a man that is getting ready to go into federal prison, that has never really been in any serious trouble before, has no idea what to expect in prison? What is some advice you would give somebody, not just what to do in prison, but what is some advice you would give somebody to help them possibly prepare for the journey that they're about to take?
They absolutely need to reach out to someone that's been there. That's just like with drugs. You don't want a drug counselor that's never been addicted trying to tell you what to do. There's a difference in knowledge and knowing, and unless you've been in prison, you have no idea what you're getting yourself into. On that note, if women have children, you really need to figure out, so you've already worked it out that they can stay with your mom, but what if your mom dies? What if something happens to your mom? Do you have it in place for where they're going to go next? Just things like that. Things like filling out your PSI correctly so you can go see your mom be buried, or your dad, or your grandparents if they raised you. If you don't fill this stuff out properly, then you're going to spend some long nights in there wishing that you had.
And another question that I had, somebody was asking, was, being you were down for quite a while, 9 years, did you have anybody that passed during your stay in prison? Did you lose any family members while you were in prison?
When I was at Alderson, so probably 3.5 years in, I lost my grandmother on my dad's side, and then 2 months later, my grandmother on my mom's side. And then 2 months before I was supposed to come home, I was already furlough eligible, but they couldn't get me a bed yet. They called me and told me that my stepfather died. And I told you earlier that he raised me, so I took that really rough. Well, a week later, they called me back to the chapel, and I'm thinking they're just checking on me because the chaplains are always so sweet. But no, they were calling me in there to tell me that my real dad died. So I lost those 4 people and several friends while I was away.
Wow. And these are some of the consequences that don't hit you right away, because until it happens when you're in prison. I was fortunate enough, none of my family passed away while I was in prison. My mother passed away while I was in the halfway house, but losing, having family and friends pass away while you're inside, you typically can't go see them. I know a lot of times they will furlough women if it's done properly. Men, it's very hard to get a furlough in the federal system to go to funerals. So these are things that, while you're preparing for federal prison, on how much time you're actually going to do, by minimizing what you did and sticking your head in the sand and just thinking your attorney is going to take care of everything, it really leads to an open wound later on. Because later on, and I saw you filed a 2255 ineffective counsel, and it got denied. I hit people all the time that tell me, well, we're going to file a 2255 when he gets to prison because the attorney didn't do this and the attorney didn't do that. You think you're unique and special because you feel like, well, attorneys are supposed to do these things. It is completely common practice for an attorney to drop the ball all over the place. So 2255s come in by the groves. They're just stacks and stacks and stacks. Almost every federal inmate that I would say gets more than 2 or 3 years says, what the fuck, might as well file a 2255 and shot in the dark. So you've got all these people that are just throwing stuff to the wall to see if it sticks. Then you have people that are filing legitimate 2255s that just get lumped in with all of the bullshit. So taking early responsibility and taking early preparation for what you can do to not minimize what you did, but minimize what the potential consequence is going to be. You know, things that you could have definitely done different is, you know, having a prison consultant early on, having your narratives done, your character references. If you were able to be out on bond, having you go to AA and NA on a regular basis, because how long? It was 18 months of investigation before you got sentenced. So if you had been free for those 18 months, with what you could have done with that 18 months could have shown and illustrated a different story to the judge to make him say, well, maybe she doesn't need 11 years. Maybe I can reduce her sentence or offer her a Rule 35, a safety valve to reduce her minimum mandatory. These are all things that she found out after the fact, and it was too late. She accepted a plea. And on most of these plea bargains, you can't go in and appeal. You can do a 2255 saying your attorney sucked, but you can't appeal because that's part of your agreement. So she served 9 years on an 11-year sentence, and that was with a year taken off for the crack law reduction of the 1 point on the sentencing guidelines. So you guys do not have to follow the same footsteps, and that's why I wanted to have you on today, because clearly you've rebounded from this. You look amazing. You're working. You've got your children. You're married. You're pretty much moved forward, and you're not allowing prison to identify who you're going to be in the future. So just imagine, for those of you that are watching this video that are terrified what you're going to do after prison. Most of you are only looking at 2, 3, 4, or 5 years. I've got a couple of you that are looking at some serious time, 10, 15 years, but most of you are looking at short term. So if Candy can turn her life around from her experience in going through the prison system, there's no reason why you can't do the same thing on a shorter sentence. So you just have to work for it now. Any final last words you want to say to people watching?
If anyone ever needs me or reaches out to you and wants me to answer questions, or you want me to come back, I'm always willing to help anyone. I don't want to see anyone struggle like I did.
And you can find, I know you're on Facebook, so you guys can definitely check out, she's on my Facebook, so if you can't find her, jump on my Facebook. Guys, if you haven't already done so, make sure you subscribe, tap that bell, text the word YouTube to 35074, because it will give you updates and notifications. Especially every Wednesday is going to be Wednesday's Ladies Night, where we're going to be focusing on women. In November, we're going to be having a mother of an inmate that's going to be talking about the struggles of what it's like to be a parent of somebody that's in federal prison. So you're going to get to see that perspective, because a lot of you have children that are in prison or going to prison. So it's going to be one more thing for us to focus on. But I do appreciate you coming on and joining us today, Candy. And we definitely will have you back on in the future. And I hope you continue to join the live stream, just like Holly's doing, and, you know, showing support, because we're going to have plenty of women on after you that probably served less time than you. So it was definitely an interesting story. So now you guys know it. You have guards in prison that are having sexual relationship with inmates. So for those of you men that have wives and mothers and daughters that are going to prison, these are concerns that you need to think about and make sure your loved ones are prepared to deal with this when they get into prison. You know, you don't have to be a victim of this. Anybody can reach out to us. If you have any questions, shoot a phone call. Again, Candy, I really appreciate you coming on today. Anybody, if you have any questions for me, let me know. Any last minute questions in here in the room? Let me double check. Oh, Juan Carlos had a question about the 48 Laws of Power. Did they allow the book of 48 Laws of Power in prison? It's a banned book as far as I've heard. I haven't heard that. Now, you told me they did take it from you, but people had it in where I was at. So that's a book that's banned now on prisons, as far as you know, too?
They couldn't have them at Alderson. When they took it from me, it was taken.
Is it
because I could get my hands.
That trains you on how to manipulate? Is that their reason for it?
I think so. Or they might think it's witchery, for all I know, but it's just to manipulate and know when you're being manipulated, which is what these guards try to do. And I wanted to know how to catch on to that.
You know, I've always been, not always, but once I entered my prison sentence and started, I became a big advocate and believer of positivity. and motivational speaking, and I got big into Tony Robbins, and I talk about his book that really sticks out for me is Awaken the Giant Within. And a friend of mine was like, oh, if you like that, you're going to like this book. And he was referring to the 48 Laws of Power. So after I'd read several of Tony Robbins' books, I'm laying up in my bunk, and I'm reading this book for about an hour, and I'm going, holy shit, this book is straight up telling you how you should be manipulating people to get what you want out of life. So I can see why that book would be removed, because not everybody is going to have the wherewithal to use that for good. It really can teach a felon to become more of a felon in the prison system. So I'm not surprised that book is banned, and I can't say that I completely disagree with it. Now everybody's going to go out. Nobody's going to go out and get the Tony Robbins book. Everybody's going to go out and get the 48 Laws of Power now. That's the lesson everybody took from this video. All right, guys, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up with that. Again, Candy, thank you very much. I'm glad you joined us. Holly, thank you for joining us in the live chat. All of you, we had 20 plus viewers checking us out. I will see you guys on Saturday, same time, Saturday will be 1 p.m. Pacific time, and then we'll see you guys next week for Wednesday Night with Ladies Night. Have a great week, everybody. Peace.